and welcome to episode 6 of the Slow Pace Knitting Space. My name is Michelle Matthews, and today is April 17th, 2021. I'm coming from Northern Alberta, Canada, and today I'm going to be talking about knitting, designing, and putting beads on knitting. But first, I'd like to talk about what I'm wearing. These earrings were made by my friend, Nikki Shafrick from Clay by Niki, and they're polymer clay, and this is some kind of metal. So I just got them yesterday, and I love them. And I was holding my son, who's 2.5, and he keeps going, I like your earrings. I like your earrings. And he's tugging at them a little bit. So, yeah, I don't have a lot of knitting to show today because I've been playing a lot of video games and because I've been really working hard to finish up my design for my Torg Socks. So I want to show off those first. These are the Torg Socks. So take a close look here at that fabric. This is a textured sock meant to resemble plaid, from the plaid flannel that Torg wears in the webcomic Sluggy Freelance. And Torg is a web designer. He starts out the comic as this happy-go-lucky goofball guy, and the comics have started being put into books, and every book starts with a recap of the characters and where the story's at. And I try to go through them and get the recap character description for Torg to explain about his character a little bit. And almost all the books say, Torg, dumb guy. And that's not very helpful because he's so much more than that. He really becomes a leader in the group, and he's the strategic genius, and actually 2 of the characters are away for a long time while Torg is growing through this character arc. And when they come back and he tells them about what's going on, and they just laugh at him, and they're like, this didn't happen, and they couldn't believe that he was really so smart and clever and creative. But Torg is really cool. He goes through a lot of character development through the comic, and he's probably my favorite character. So, and that's why my first Sluggy Freelance pattern is inspired by him. He starts the comic wearing a white flannel and eventually changes to something else that becomes kind of iconic for different reasons. So yeah, this pattern it's done being tech edited, so I can publish it almost any time. But what I'm waiting for now is I made a low vision accessible version of it, so a large print, and I'm working on a screen reader accessible version of the pattern, and I'm having it checked out by Renee Van Hoy, and she's taken a look to see just how readable the large print version is for people who have the different needs from having low vision issues. I don't have a screen reader, so she's going to take a look at the screen reader version for me as well. So a big thank you to Kayla from Heritage Arts Company for tech editing. And I'm going to link that down below in case you would like to check out a tech editor and get your pattern tech edited. So, yeah, the Torg Socks are knit cuff down, and the pattern is written to be not specific. You don't need specifically double point needles or magic loop. It's written so that whatever you're using, you can figure out your needle management and how to do it. But it's still, I think it's a good pattern for beginners because it's not complicated. It's very basic. It makes for good travel knitting or TV knitting. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I knit it twice because I wanted a pair. So these ones are for my husband. I wanted a pair of ankle socks, so I knit it twice. And I don't normally knit things more than once. It's also good because it's a really good pattern for men or women because it's just so simple, and I think it has like a classic look to it. It's really basic in a good way. So that's the Torg Socks. And related to that, I found out recently that back in 2005, somebody made a Torg tabletop card game. And so I immediately went to eBay and we got one. And this game is, it's called Get Nifty. And the funny thing is, it only has stuff from the first 8 years of the Sluggy comic because that's all that was out. And so there's 15 years since then. No. Yeah. 15 years since then of more comics. So there's characters who aren't in it. They have character cards and all sorts of things like, oh, we got Gofotron, who is totally a spoof of something, but I don't know what it is. And they have, ooh, you like cute talking animals? We got Kiki, your hyperactive ferret. I was joking that if I made socks based on Kiki, they would have, what they would be like these scrappy socks that would start off one thing and then 2 rows in switch to lace and 2 rows in switch to something else, and you would have an afterthought heel because it would be a play on just how distractible that Kiki is. But honestly, Kiki wouldn't finish a pair of socks, so I don't know if I'll do that. We got Crystal. She's their favorite bartender at their local bar. Crystal is no nonsense and likes to create really fun drinks. Like, I think she had a cheeseburger shot one year. Dr. Schlock, who I think he invented inflatable technology, such as the inflatable spaceship. We got Bun Bun, another cute talking animal who will kill you if you call him cute. Bun Bun. Yeah, Bun Bun is pictured on the back of the cards. He's the one wielding a switchblade. And there's just so much in this comic. It's very fun. There. Here's Torg, pictured in his flannel from these socks are based on. Here we have Zoe and Crystal. And if you look very closely, you can see Zoe has this tattoo. When I make a Zoe pair of socks, I'm going to have beading on it that looks like the necklace and then color work on it that looks like the tattoo. So someday I'll get to that and I'm pretty excited. Well, here we go. This is a picture of Bun Bun again, and the description of Bun Bun says, "Missing pet bunny. Warning, consider armed and dangerous. Do not approach your own on your own. Contact authorities. Do not hug." Yeah. So we played this the other day and it's got a steep learning curve, but I think it's going to become a favorite. And sometimes my husband or I, and always one of us and never both at the same time, sometimes we get into like this little bit of a bad attitude when we're playing games if we're losing, particularly in Settlers of Catan. But the fun thing about this game is that it's just so funny because we're so familiar with the comic that it's impossible to be in a bad mood when we play this. So, Torg Socks, Get Nifty card game. Yeah. Oh, another thing that I've been working on is my next design after the Torg Socks, because I realized I've been waiting on this tech editor or this person to get things going, and so I was thinking, I'm so impatient to get this pattern published and out into the world, and I realized, well, why don't I just work on the next pattern while I'm waiting? Why don't I do something productive with my time that I have here. So I started working on my Max socks, and I was going to call them Max Elijah Benjamin to name them completely after my cousin, but I called them on my project page Max Socks with an X on each word for fun, and I've kind of been referring to them as that, and I think that's just what they're going to end up being called now. And so I had started these before, and then I ripped them all out so that I could restart them in April. And so this is what I have so far. There. And you can see I have this part, which is reminiscent of the racetrack and the walls of the racetrack. I have the Mario star and this question mark. I'll be right back. The question mark is supposed to resemble the little box they have for question marks, and if you throw a fake one for your opponents to crash in, it's upside down. So that's how I have it on here, partly because it just fits next to the star better. And also, right here, it is touching here, even though I did knit a row. So I'm not sure if I knit into that wrong or pulled that stitch tight, but I'm going to try and figure that out for the next sock. This is knit out of Polkadot Creek, one of her sock sets. And I'm specifically trying to design, I want to design a pair of socks based on a sock set that comes with 2 minis like hers, because I really appreciate how kind Shelley was to me to send me a fruitcake sock set for Christmas one year. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. I knit like all of that last night when we were watching a movie, so it is color work, but it's pretty quick. There we go. And the proceeds, that's the sock, where the proceeds from that sock are going to the Children's Stollery Hospital in Edmonton, because that's where my cousin went when he had cancer, and these socks are named after him and are in memory of him. Next, I want to share my new cast on, which is the round 2 Sock Madness pattern. I ended up deciding not to knit round 1 because I kind of had a rocky start, and then I just didn't love the pattern, and I didn't have a lot of interest in knitting anything. So I kind of took a little bit of time off and bounced around on other projects, which I have hardly really touched since then. But a week ago, the round 2 pattern launched, and I want to say I love it, but I don't quite almost love it. I really like it. It has all the things I like in a intricate pattern. It has lace and cables and beads. I really love putting beads on my knitting because it's just adds an extra glimmer and it's fun. But this pattern is just a little bit busy for me. I think, I don't know, I don't completely subscribe to less is more when it comes to sock patterns, because I do get bored with a pattern where it's, where it's mostly stockinette and just has a little bit of cables, and I get bored with those. So I do like something intricate, but this one has a lot going on, but I think I picked a yarn that shows it off rather well. So this is called All the Bees because it has beads, it has brioche, it has baubles, all the bees. And I'm knitting this out of Campfiber Yarns in her colorway Content. So the first thing, let's get an impression of it here. It is gorgeous and busy. But the first thing that we did was we did a beaded cast on, and it was very similar to the tubular cast on, if you've ever done that. At least that's what everybody in the thread said. Very similar to the tubular cast on, and it ends up with these beads all along the top. And 1 by 1 rib. And then we just jump right into it. We got cables going and beads on those cables. This is the pattern that uses 250 some beads. Beads here with 1 in the middle, it had to be a contrasting one. I'm a cheerleader, so I don't have to follow the specified requirements. I could have done the same bead, but I kind of like how that looks. And then we have on the side, we have a mini little bauble here. And when it gets to later, they're going to have a different kind of bauble, but I like how the bead looks, so I might just bead right down the foot, and on the very last spot where there's a bauble, I'll have a bauble there. So this is, whoa, there. This is the pattern. I'm keeping my needles with this little needle keeper I got from the Fibre Nook in Edmonton, and it's really handy. My only issue is that my kids have taken it and stretched it so much that the stretchy elastic pops right out of the rubber thing, but they are old enough to leave it alone now. A modification I've done is that, so this part is a section, and then here is a section, and this part didn't have any of these beads. It went into something a little bit more plain, which is really good if people don't like having beads in their shoe or their boot near their foot. But the more beads the better. Well, we'll see if I really feel that way when we get to the 1,000 bead socks, but the more beads the better, so I kept it going. This one was supposed to be a bauble, but I wanted to have a bead instead. Yeah, so I have, this is the entire leg, and it's ready to start into the heel turn, no, the heel flap, and the heel flap is not plain, like it keeps the pattern going, and I think it's going to be really nice. But I was starting to feel my mojo leave on these socks, and so whenever I do that, when I'm knitting a pair of socks, I know that it's time to go on to the next one, because I suffer from single sock syndrome. So when I finish a sock, I have no desire to go and start and knit that over again. Like, you don't do that for other things, like mitts you do, but you don't do that for a toque. You knit your toque, you're done. You knit your shawl, you're done. You knit your sweater, you're done. And unless it has sleeves, then you kind of get a taste of it. But I really, I need to do a bit of this sock and a bit of that sock, otherwise I'm just gonna have a really hard time keeping that second sock going. So I cast on the cuff. You cast on with some scrap yarn at first to get it going, and I'm just barely into this second cuff. Oh, I'm at the point where I need to switch to the larger needles. No, I'm not. I thought I just cast this on the small ones. You start with larger and switch to smaller, so I just switched to the smaller needles. Boy, I thought I did that wrong. So that's all the bees. Sock Madness round 2. And I've been keeping them in my Doctor Who project bag that I got in a Doctor Who swap from a swap group on Ravelry. They used to do swaps and they stopped when the pandemic hit. It's called the Odd Ducks Swaps of Ravelry. And they would have a whole year planned out with these themed swaps. And so a few years ago I saw they were doing a Doctor Who one, and I jumped in and I just got spoiled. I got yarn, I got a project bag, I got like a lap blanket that somebody made, and it was just so nice. I would love to do some more swaps again once the group reopens. They may already have. I haven't checked in a little while. And I've also been using, for the beaded socks, I've been using I've been calling them oil slick beads. Is that showing up? Yeah. I don't know what they're called. They're a matte one, so I don't know if they're really iridescent, if they're matte. But they're like greeny, bluey, purpley, yellow, and one bead has multiple colors sometimes on it. And I got these from Bead Canada, and they're size 8/0. And I don't know what that means, except that the smaller the top number, like you can have 6/0, 8/0 for socks, and the smaller the number, the smaller the bead. So that's all I've been knitting on lately. Everything else that I have is kind of just on hold while I focus on these socks. And the Harry Potter Knit Crochet House Cup sock group finished its term. So they have 3-month terms and then they have a break month. And right now is the spring break month. And I sent in my application to be sorted into a house. And really they just say, what house do you want to be in? And then what's your second choice? So I sorted and I asked to be in Hufflepuff, which isn't normally what I would consider my house. I'm not a Hufflepuff. As a teenager, I thought I was a Gryffindor because Gryffindor just seems the coolest, of course. But my video cut out. Okay, I think as a teenager and a kid, Gryffindor was the bomb. And now when I look at the houses, I think I a little bit more feel like a Ravenclaw. But when I was looking through the house groups on Ravelry, I really felt most home in the Hufflepuff house. They had the clearest thread describing what all the classes were with the prompts. They had it just laid out so nice, and the different things their house works on looked fun, and they just looked so not confusing. And they had like this self-care thread right at the top, and so I just felt this bond that this is where I should be. And I think it helped also that my aunt, who has been playing in the House Cup for a few years now, she's in Hufflepuff. And I sent her a text that I applied to be sorted and I asked to be in Hufflepuff and we can be in there together. And she goes, oh well, I just asked to be in Slytherin. And I was like, no! And then she said, just kidding. So she got me. Hopefully I will be sorted into Hufflepuff and we'll see. Because I've been kind of just like playing as a student on sabbatical, which means my things don't really count for points, and I'm just playing along, but I wanted to really join in, I guess. So for break month, they've had a couple different bingo games going on in different threads, and one of them is like stuff we're doing at home. So this is what I have. It has cleaning things and a little bit of knitting and some projects I want to get done. So yeah, they have a week where they're working on closets, and so they have a week where they're working on your craft space and just a little bit of prompt, but really it's do whatever you want. And then they also have a kitchen bingo, and they're really basic, like cook a meal, have a snack, and I really should have some of these colored in, but I just keep forgetting to do that while I'm going about my day. They also have a self-care bingo, and I've been enjoying that. A problem I have is that, like, one of the things here is did something that made me smile, and I'm like, well, it has to be a really good thing. It can't just be anything that made me smile. You know, I took my baby outside and she walked around outside by herself for the first, well, not I was there, she wasn't really by herself, but she walked outside for the first time, and she was wearing shoes for the first time, and that made me smile because babies wearing shoes for the first time, it's like they're learning to walk all over again because they suddenly have this 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch difference in how they feel the ground, and it's just really cute. But you know, was that good enough? It made me smile, I can cross it off, or does it need to be even bigger, like I just saw the most awesome thing, or you know, ate something delicious? Well, we had poutine for supper last night. Is that delicious, or do I need to make a cake? Like, I second guess myself a little bit, and it has to be really good. It can't just technically qualify. It has to embody the spirit of it, and sometimes I overthink things just a little bit. Yeah, that's what we got. So that's what I've been doing for the Harry Potter Knit Crochet House Cup group, and I have plans for the Socks from Stash group on Ravelry. Their monthly prompt for April is to knit from a repeat designer, and so I'm putting my max socks in that if I finish them. I only have to the end of the month to finish them, so I probably won't. We'll see. Because I've knit for my own design before, I count as a repeat designer. And then the Sock Knitters Anonymous, the SCA group, their monthly prompt for April and May together is design your own. And that is the whole reason I ripped them out so that I could start again in April, is so that they would qualify for that, because I will finish them by May, and like by the end of May. So I'll put them in. I do like the Socks from Stash group entering stuff in, partly because I'm more likely to get a prize from that group because there's a smaller amount of people entering stuff in, and I have won patterns from them twice, which was really exciting. And I think I've entered in the Sock Knitters Anonymous group more times, but I think I have won once, which I'm not ungrateful for, but I think I have a better chance in the Socks from Stash group. But both of them are a lot of fun. So that's all the knitting I have. What I'd like to do now, though, is I'm going to take my camera and show you how to put beads on knitting, because there's a few techniques. Oh, and I didn't show my new tool that I made. There's a few techniques for putting beads on knitting, and I kind of described one with the floss, the braces floss threader. But what I did, and I'll show this better in a moment when I move my camera, but I made this needle thing that holds the beads on it, and then I can put my beads onto my knitting that way. And the nice thing I like about this, I'm just going to talk about it when I talk about the beading, because you can actually see it better. So we'll get right to that. So these socks are my All the Bees socks from round 2 of Sock Madness this year, 2021. And ignore that they're in different size needles. These ones are just kind of place holding while I was knitting the next sock. So the first way, I'm going to show how to put a bead right here. And the pattern doesn't call for a bead right here. I'm just demonstrating. So the way I've been doing it has been with my wire tool that I made based on a post somebody else made. And so what this is just 24 gauge beading wire with some crimp beads. Okay, it's hard to focus. Crimp beads and some beads. And that's really just decorative and placeholder so the beads don't fall off the end. And I load this up. I've had up to 30 beads on here. I could have this whole string, whole wire filled if I wanted. And that's something I really like about it, this method, because I have little kids, other people might have pets. I don't want to have this open. I don't want to have a little dish with beads that can be knocked over. I'm certainly not leaving a pile of beads on the couch unless it's after 8 o'clock and everyone's in bed. So I like that I can work on this in the daytime by having these beads on this wire. They're not falling off. The kids who are capable of taking the beads off are also the kids who know better. So that's nice. So this is, I should be showing this one last because it's, in my opinion, of its superiority, but I just want to show how simple this is. So you stick it right here into your stitch until your stitch comes in, kind of like when you're basically threading it on. And so you have it in that hole. Pull it off the needle and just kind of hold on to it while I slide this bead up and stick it in here. Sometimes they stick a little bit, but this one went nice and smoothly. These are seed beads, size 8. And they just go on just like that. Put it back in your needle, pop the thing off the wire, and then you would knit that stitch and keep going. And so I really like this method. It has made it so that knitting and adding beads to my knitting is not interrupting things. I just stop, put it on, and go. Whereas some of these other methods are slightly more time consuming, and I like it quick. So that's the beading wire. You can also buy things like a Flegel beater I've heard of that more or less do the same thing. But this is nice because I didn't have to buy anything. I already had the tools for that, made it at home. The next method that I've been doing is with this. This is for threading floss when you have braces, which I do have. So you stick your floss through here, and then you stick this bit through your braces, and then the floss is on the other side of the wire, and you can floss your teeth. Very practical. Except that it's so hard to floss with braces. I got a cheap water flosser off Amazon, and as soon as it prevents one cavity, it's paid for itself. But the problem with that is, how do you know when you've prevented one cavity? So I just choose to believe it's worth the cost, even though it wasn't actually that much because it was a cheap one. So I showed that. I'm going to show how to bead with it. I just want to get one that I've already taken. So when you pull them out, it's this one solid piece, and first thing you're going to do is split that so that you got these two ends instead of one. Now when you want to put a bead on your knitting, you can do the same thing as you did before and stick this through, and sometimes it's a little tricky. You might need to open it up with your needle a little bit, pull it off the needle again. I find this one more fiddly just because I've got these two ends I'm working with, whereas with the wire it's just that little bit more sturdy. So then you thread this on, pull it onto your stitch, stitch back on the needle, and then you knit that stitch. But the thing about that one is you have to do it one at a time. And so every time I need a bead, I need to get a bead, whether it's in here. I suppose I could keep like a chain of them on some spare yarn or something, and then just take one off each time. But basically, you have to individually do it every time. And I did that for the first... No, I did that for a different pair of socks. For the whole pair of socks, a different pair that had less beads, and it was a little bit time consuming. And then, so that's why I made this for this pair, because I just knew I was going to need something faster. And then the last method for, if you don't have one of these, you can use beading wire. You can use floss that if you wax the end, if you have beeswax, you can use the wire from inside twist ties. There's lots of options. You just have to figure out what works for you. And also, there's another kind of floss that I couldn't find, but for braces, where it's a cut string, a foot or 30 centimeters of regular floss, but the one end of it is very stiff, and that's so that you can thread it up through your wire, and then you can just floss. And those work the same way as this one does. You would thread it through the loop, and then bring the two ends together and floss the bead, and put it on your yarn, just like we did with this one. So I couldn't find mine, but it's basically the same thing. The third method for putting your beads onto your knitting is to use a crochet hook. This crochet hook is 2 millimeters and it's too big. I could not find for the life of me my other crochet hook, which I think might be 1 millimeter or 0.75 or even 0.5. I'm not sure. It's very tiny, and it is small enough to go through this little bead. And this one, as you can see, is just that little bit too big. It's not going to work. So, for demonstrative purposes only, I have this much bigger wooden bead. So, to use this, with those other methods, you would, with the floss, you put the floss on the yarn on the floss, and then the bead. And with this one, you pre-string the wire with beads, then you put the yarn on the wire, and then the beads. With the crochet hook, you load up your bead first. Well, bam. You would yeah, use a smaller crochet hook to fit on the bead you actually want in your sock. Unless you want enormous beads in your socks. They probably won't fit in your shoe, but maybe if you're making a sweater, this would work. So put the bead on the crochet hook. Okay, that thing is right in the way. And you put your hook through the loop and pull it through, and now ideally you would have a small bead, and so the loop would fit through the bead. This is enormous. We're just going to yank that, make it real tight, pull it through. Oh. And this is kind of the downfall, the drawback of the crochet hook method, is that it's very easy to split your yarn. If you see the twist, the tiny crochet hook can get in between those plies and split your yarn a little bit, or you might drop the yarn while it's in the bead, and there, and then stick that back on your needle. This bead is too big for this, so this bead would probably, if I wanted to put these on knitting, it would have to be like worsted or bulky, and then you could knit it. So this is just so big. Yeah, some problems with this method is that it's really easy to split your yarn. It's hard to, when the crochet hook is small enough to go through such a little bead hole as that, then it's almost too small to pull this kind of yarn. It's really meant for lace weight or like thread. So it's splitty, it doesn't always grab very well. But I do like that. That's probably my second favorite method for putting beads on. And this one is my favorite. So there you have it. 3 ways to put beads on your knitting. Well, all right. Thank you so much for watching my podcast. Thank you for everybody who comments and sends me messages. Thank you so much for coming back each time to watch these videos. And to anyone who's new, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the video and you're interested in more for the next one. I have kind of settled into a rhythm of making these every 2 weeks. And that really works for me. I wanted to do at one point 3 times a month, but that worked every 10 days, and then that just had me like panicking and scrambling. And the whole point of the slow paced knitting space is about fitting your knitting into your life and making it all work without being frustrated, without burning out, without pushing yourself, without doing it at anyone's expense. So every 2 weeks really works for us, and that's where I'm going to keep it at. So I thank you again so much for watching. Do you want to come say goodbye with me? Okay, come here.
Can we watch it?
No, it's not done. All right, I'm just saying goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Yeah, thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Why do you have the Mario box?
Because I was showing it. Let's turn the video off.